So if you've ever stepped foot in a yoga studio, or even just scrolled through wellness accounts online, you've definitely heard the word chakra, right? You probably instantly picture those colorful spinning wheels, glowing energy fields, or maybe just a general vibe of spiritual alignment. But what exactly is a chakra? Like underneath all the modern buzzwords and the rainbow yoga mats, what are we really talking about? Are they literal physical nerve clusters, psychological maps of our minds, or some kind of mystical energy we're only just starting to figure out? Let's get into it.
Welcome. Today, we're tracing the massive, millennia-long journey of the chakra system. We're going to strip away all the assumptions and look directly at the historical and scientific source material to figure out how this ancient Eastern concept transformed into the global phenomenon we know today.
Here's how we'll be breaking it down today. 1. The concept of chakras. 2. Ancient Vedic origins. 3. The classical chakra system. 4. The journey to the West. 5. The rainbow transformation. And finally, 6. Chakras and modern science. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The concept of chakras. Understanding the basics.
Before we jump into the timeline, we really need to nail down what the ancient texts actually meant when they originally used this term. The concept we're all familiar with is properly known in the ancient literature as Shada chakra. Shad literally translates to the number 6, and chakra means wheel or circle. Put that together, and you've got a 6-wheel system. These are fundamentally described as centers of consciousness that channelize human potential energy. Think of it as an ancient anatomical map, but instead of flesh and bone, it's a map of subtle energy and consciousness.
And just so you know, to make sure this explainer is completely grounded in facts, we're drawing heavily from a super comprehensive academic review. It was published in the International Research Journal of Ayurveda and Yoga by Smriti Kaur and Seema Rani. We're also pulling from an extensive bibliography of historical chakra literature compiled by the International Association of Yoga Therapists. So we aren't just dealing with folklore here. We are looking at documented textual history.
All right, Section 2. Ancient Vedic origins. The earliest mentions. Let's rewind way back to the very beginning. As you can see, this concept evolved massively over thousands of years. It moved from ancient Vedic scriptures well before the Common Era to highly systematized texts in 1577, over to Western theosophical literature in the 1920s, and then all the way to New Age literature in the 1970s. It's a system that has just been constantly rewritten and reinterpreted.
The very first seed of this idea actually started in the Rig Veda, which is one of the absolute oldest known Vedic Sanskrit texts. Specifically, in hymn 10.136, we find this incredibly enigmatic mention of a renunciate yogi accompanied by a female named Kunamanama, and that word literally translates to bent or coiled. Scholars point to this as one of the earliest hidden references to the concept of Kundalini, that dormant, coiled serpent energy that's supposed to sit at the base of the spine, just waiting to wake up.
Later on during the Upanishad era, these concepts started getting fleshed out big time. Across 17 different yoga Upanishads, the details of these energy centers really start taking shape, even though, funnily enough, they often contradict each other. For example, the Brahma Upanishad only mentions 4 places where the Brahma shines: the navel, heart, throat, and head. Then you have the Kusurika Upanishad, which introduces this crucial complementary idea of 72,000 nadis. Those are the subtle energy channels that flow all through the body. And the Sandilya Upanishad, it actually places that coiled Kundalini energy around the navel, not the base of the spine. It was just a time of wild, diverse spiritual exploration.
And hey, it wasn't just Hindu texts either. Interestingly, around the 8th century, esoteric Buddhist texts like the Hevajradra Tantra featured a 5-chakra system. This just goes to show that the standard 7-chakra model we all know today definitely wasn't the only one back in the ancient world. The Buddhist mother class of Tantras mapped out 5 centers and assigned an element to each. So you had earth at the base, water at the abdomen, fire at the heart, wind at the throat, and space at the crown. It's pretty amazing to see how deeply integrated these energetic maps were across various ancient Eastern philosophies.
Which brings us to Section 3. The classical chakra system. The 6-wheel model emerges.
So it actually wasn't until around the 10th to 16th centuries that the more familiar, highly systematized chakra frameworks were written down. A huge defining moment happened in 1577. Swami Purnananda, who was a celebrated tantric practitioner from Bengal, wrote a text called the Satchakra Nirupana.
This text completely solidified the classical Shada chakra, that six-chakra framework. It broke down the petals, the specific mantras, and exactly where they were located along the spine. This specific 16th century text is truly the cornerstone that heavily influenced our modern, global understanding of what chakras are today.
Section 4. Journey to the West. Global Expansion.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth did a 16th century tantric text become a total staple of modern Western wellness? Well, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this ancient Eastern system made a monumental trip to the West. And as it traveled, it completely transformed. Look at this profound contrast. The original Eastern focus was all about spiritual liberation, esoteric subtle energy, and waking up that divine Kundalini energy to achieve higher consciousness. But as it moved west, the focus shifted dramatically. Western interpretation started adapting chakras into psychological models, mapping them directly onto physical endocrine glands, assigning them rainbow colors, and using them to represent phases of human psychological development. It was an absolute paradigm shift.
The bridge between these two very different worlds was really built in 1919. A British man named Sir John Woodroffe, writing under the pseudonym Arthur Avalon, published a book called The Serpent Power. And this was actually a direct translation of that 1577 text we just talked about, the Sat Chakra Nirupana. This publication was an incredible game-changer because it was the first time the traditional Indian tantric view was accurately presented to Western audiences in a way they could easily consume.
The concept was so compelling that it even caught the eye of some of the West's most brilliant minds. The prominent Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung actually embraced the concept and gave a whole series of seminars on it in 1932. He famously treated the chakras not as literal physical wheels in the body, but as profound psychological maps for individual development. For Jung, raising your energy from the lower chakras up to the higher ones was just a perfect metaphor for bringing the unconscious mind into conscious awareness. Pretty fascinating, right?
Moving on to Section 5, the Rainbow Transformation, adding color. Now, if you've been wondering where the famous rainbow colors of the chakras actually come from, the red root, the green heart, the purple crown, get ready for a surprise. That association with the specific colors of the rainbow, it absolutely did not exist in ancient times. No way! It was introduced fairly recently, in 1977, by a guy named Christopher Hills in his book Nuclear Evolution, Discovery of the Rainbow Body. He is the one who pioneered this entirely modern synthesis. What Hills did was masterfully map the visible light spectrum, like the literal physics of light, onto the chakras to represent progressively expanding levels of wellness and consciousness. So, red, which is the longest wavelength, corresponds to your present baseline state of health. Then you move up through orange for reducing risk factors, yellow for a rational approach, green for emotional balance, blue for higher purpose, indigo for metaphysical awareness, all the way up to violet. Violet is the shortest wavelength, representing universal consciousness and unity. And guys, this 1970s rainbow model is the exact framework pretty much the whole world uses today. It's this wild blend of ancient subtle anatomy and modern optics.
And finally, Section 6, Chakras and Modern Science, Measuring the Subtle.
Today, we're looking at a completely fascinating new frontier, how modern science and medicine are actually trying to physically measure and locate these once purely mystical centers. Researchers have been painstakingly mapping these ancient Sanskrit terms to specific, highly verifiable physical nerve clusters in the human body. For example, the Muladhara at the base of the spine lines up perfectly with the coccygeal plexus. The Anahata, or heart chakra, aligns with the cardiac plexus. The Vishuddha at the throat correlates to the pharyngeal plexus. Science is basically finding that ancient yogis were incredibly accurate at pinpointing the major junction boxes of our central nervous system.
And scientists aren't just mapping them on paper, they are actively measuring them. Going back to the 1920s, Western researchers started linking the chakras to the major endocrine glands. Then, jump to 1977, a researcher named Hunt used electromyographic, or EMG, surface electrodes and actually discovered distinct electrical frequency bands at these exact locations. And even more recently, in a 2015 study by Jalil and colleagues, they used radiofrequency meters and detected actual radiation ranging from 29 to 86 megahertz at the major chakra sites. They found the highest frequencies right at the third eye and crown. So there is verifiable electromagnetic activity happening exactly where the ancient text said these energy wheels spin.
And you know what? The evolution continues to this very day. This is not a static system. Just recently in 2018, a researcher and spiritual teacher named Sri Amit Ray expanded this ancient system even further.
He mapped an astonishing 114 distinct chakras across the entire human body. He's actively giving names and functions to complex physiological and subtle energetic intersections that we are only just beginning to map out.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've traced this incredible journey from cryptic, coiled verses in the ancient Rig Veda all the way to 16th century tantric texts, through the psychology of Carl Jung, and straight into modern electromyographic sensors. So what do you think? Are these ancient spinning wheels purely biological nerve clusters? Are they just psychological maps of our developing minds? Or are they a profound, mystical energy system that modern science is only just beginning to catch up with? The evolution of the Shada chakra is clearly far from over, and understanding its history just might be the very first step in understanding ourselves.